All right, we are live. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Ed Rabyd, your host, former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. This Thursday night, so this is the Deconversion Hangout, where those of you that are deconverting, um, coming out of the faith, in the process of coming out of the faith, have come out of the faith and are still struggling, I am happy to be here and be your support mechanism. It's kind of the reason I designed this deconversion handout for people that are in the process of deconversion. So thank all of you for being here as people hopefully will shuffle in a little bit. I had this the last time I did this stream. This was at first I was like, am I going to be the only one here? But it didn't take very long for people to arrive. And so, so we have, hey, Alex, just a few reminders for those of you that may be coming in. You have to be subscribed to the channel to participate in the chat. You also have to be subscribed for at least 5 minutes. And I did that to get rid of the drive-by theists that like to just come by live broadcasts and drop in and say their shit and run away. So I'm getting rid of that idea with that. We also, there's no ads on this one. This live stream is ad-free. The reason I do that is I want this to be an uninterrupted conversation for people watching. So that's you, then then we're here. But yes, yeah, you are the first one here. This one, it was funny because this last week, this became like my biggest live stream of the week. It really did. And it was a slow burn. Like it started out like this with 4 or 5 people. That sort of thing. It's not, that's not the issue. It's more of a, people began to see, hey, we're hanging out and we're just talking about deconversion. So there are plenty of support groups. Do you consider Alcoholics Anonymous an echo chamber? Okay. Last week we had 35 people watching at once. So that it was a good thing. So it's kind of interesting that, it's kind of, the deconversion hangout is happening, I guess, and people came. So I had 35 people watching at once, and I had, overall, there was like 145 people stop by. So it kind of surprised me. I didn't think it would be that big the first day, but here we are again. Hey, Anne Marie. And then, hey, Robin, good to see you. Yeah, I try to come up with an issue to get us rolling as far as a deconversion issue. And usually the one that comes up the most is how to deal with family. But there's also, for me, I've noticed something very interesting at work, and I have to wonder if it's if it was related to my atheism, because I know several people at work know about my channel, and I know some of them watch, but I do tend to feel like sometimes I'm treated differently at work because I'm an atheist, and I'm wondering if anybody else has had that similar experience, or because they've left the faith or leaving the faith, you get a different treatment. But do a call-in show and try to convince people to join. I think that already exists. I'm very interested in where the church is heading given new technology. So, hey, Lisa. And yeah, I think, Greg, what I'm pointing out with this particular stream, like my other streams are wide open. Like, unless you engage in really bad behavior, my mods will kick your ass out, quite frankly. But most of the time, if you are civil and everything in those ones, but I think people who are deconverting, they feel like if they talk about it in public, it it ends up being a fight every time. And I've had a lot of people come in and say that that's a problem with talking about, deconstructing and deconverting from faith, is that people of the faith tend to be very hostile to that very idea, because it's, faith and religion tend to be a part of people's identity. And they think you're attacking them. It's weird, because if you leave the faith, somehow it's an attack on them, even though they're staying in it. It's, I don't know. It's having this kind of forum, I thought, would have been valuable for me. If you're a person that's going through the deconversion process and you're leaving the faith, you need a place to come and talk about it. And that's all I'm really doing here. It's not so much an echo chamber as it's, there's plenty of opportunities for theists to engage us atheists outside of this. And I have 2 other streams, like literally my other stream, Rabyd Fire, is the opposite of this one, where I'm completely wide open to whoever wants to show up and ask me questions. And then I react to a video on Saturday, so that's a lot of fun. So, go simple rather than promote technology. It is. There's a reason why religions tend to be anti-technology. Not all of them, but some of them do. And I think this is an interesting thing you note when you come out of the faith, is that there's a whole bunch of new ideas and stuff that's open to you that wasn't before. But, like there's whole countries that allow very restricted internet access for a reason, because they don't want the people to access stuff that is contrary to their religion, okay, and the religious basis of whatever they're doing. So censorship has always been the product of people trying to control and manipulate people. So when I see anybody saying, hey, we need to shut down this or that or the other, I always get a little antsy, because it seems like you're trying to get rid of something where it might be free flow of information and stuff like that. So I'm very much a free dialogue one. I agree with you. I do think it's circling the drain. I think it's kind of getting to a point where, at least in the Western world, I would probably push back on that, and probably the rest of the world. The Middle East is very religious still. Africa is very religious. Latin America is still religious. The Far East is still very religious. So it's the Western world. Once you open the doors of science and reason and things like that, sooner or later it's going to fail. But it may not happen in my lifetime, but hopefully my grandkids will enjoy a fairly religious free country. But kind of in flux right now, I'll just say that. I am trying to allow people to express their ideas without immediately being name called. Okay. I think if you're engaged in name calling of somebody when they express an idea, that you run out of argument yourself. I'd rather come up with a better argument and deal with it, because my goal has always been to build allies. I'm not trying to make enemies. Okay. I think the smarter people always try to build allies. And, I would love to have a Christian friend again, I guess, but, like Earl here, her and Missing Mod are kind of tight, but it's, hey, Earl, but it's, I would love to have that again, just to have somebody I can talk to, but the environment is so contentious that it's sometimes hard to get a good conversation. And when people are deconverting, they really do want a good conversation. Okay. They want to talk even to people. I know I wanted to talk to people of faith about my struggles, but I never could, because it always invited hostility. Okay. And it's like, it goes back to that, talking about how when you're deconverting, people take religion as part of their identity. And so when you leave a religion, the people of that religion get very defensive about that. Well, why are you doing that? We have the truth, stuff like that. So, Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea. um, yeah, the music movie stuff. It's funny how, like, I was always a metalhead, and I was always somebody looking for alternative music too. And I, it's interesting that my public religious persona as a youth, I had all this Christian metal rock, all that stuff. And I always got pushed back from the leadership, but they couldn't really, they never could pin me down with a Bible verse that says that certain types of music were of the devil, although they claimed that. That's probably one of the most interesting parts of my childhood is growing up in the 80s is the whole debate between Christian contemporary music and, the real sacred hymns kind of thing. That was always a funny part of it. Uh, yeah, you can. You can. I would appreciate if the questions related to deconversion. Uh, you know, but I'll go off on a tangent. Rabbit trails are my specialty, as you know. So I love watching people go on rabbit trails. So being the rabid atheist and being called something else. I thought you would get a laugh out of that. Yes, I thought you would. So, but yeah, bunnies. Follow the bunnies. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll make my symbol the bunny from Quest for the Holy Grail by Monty Python. Maybe that's the true rabid atheist symbol right there. So, um, but yeah, getting back to Alex's thoughts, it's like I remember growing up in a Pentecostal church, the holiness aspects of it that still affect me today. Don't watch this movie. Don't listen to this type of music. I wasn't allowed to go to dances, so I don't know how to dance. Okay, because I wasn't allowed to go to them. It's it's just one of those things. And one of the things that's on my list of a future partner is can teach me how to dance. Would be put her up top of the line. So it's like when you're deconverting and you're coming out of that, why did they stop you from looking at all that? Because all of that stuff has different ideas and allows you to be human. Um, so there's that aspect of it. Yes, I know. Sharp, pointy teeth. Yes, I'm a nice guy until you bring out my teeth. I suppose that's actually a pretty good symbol if I think about it a little bit longer. Oh boy, that's a tough one. Getting over the fear of hell. I got over the idea of hell being reality long before I got over the fear of it. And I think it just goes to the power of indoctrination. I would say a little bit of time and a constant reminding of yourself that this isn't a real place. There's as much proof for hell as there is Valhalla. It's the whole thing with afterlife beliefs is if you ask people for proof of them, they don't have anything. They just assume them. And it takes an emotional while. I got over, I dismissed hell while I was still a theist. I became one of those guys that kind of, it just I got away from it. Okay. Because it was like, no, I don't think that that's what God would do. I think I agreed with my professor, Mr. Walls at Asbury, that it's inconsistent with the love of God to put somebody in hell. So, it's that aspect of it that got away from me when I was still a theist, although I had to maintain a literal hell while I was in a semi-God priesthood. But then after that, the emotional fear of punishment by God, regardless of what it is, sticks with you for a while. What if you're wrong? You're going to end up in hell, and it's that it takes a while for you to get over that. I wish I had a good silver bullet answer for you other than to constantly remind yourself that there is absolutely no evidence for the existence of hell. It is a stated position and it's a manipulative tactic. And once you get that into your head more and more, it gets better. I don't really fear hell anymore. Yep. Still can do it, probably. because I consider learning to speak in tongues a learned behavior. But yes, I was a Pentecostal preacher. You have to speak in tongues in order to prove that you're filled with the Spirit to be a Pentecostal preacher, at least in the Assemblies of God. So there's that. Yes, the holy hand grenade of Antioch. Uh, so, yeah, that's my point. There is some real emotional trauma. I would probably emphasize this. If you're having a real problem with the fear of hell, contact Recovering from Religion and see if they can help you with some therapy, because I think that's you can intellectually get over it, but if you grew up in a church that was heavy-handed with this, you're going to go to hell if you don't believe what we believe, that can be a really heavy rap and a real heavy emotional trauma to get over. And if you need help with that, I would strongly recommend therapy. It took me a while to get over the emotional fear of it, but the intellectually, it's like, what am I afraid of here? It's like anything that you are afraid of in the past, and then you suddenly realize it's not real. Um, the emotional triggering can still be there, but intellectually, you're like, yeah, this is bullshit. But yeah, quantum immortality. Explain. I want an explanation to understand the question. So let's see. Yeah. Thoughts on heaven. I don't know. See, I was I was listening to Mark Twain the other day, and he had this. I don't really have any thoughts on eternity because I have friends going to both places. So um, it it's it's an uncomfortable thought to me. The more I thought about heaven, I mean, I'm a big reader of Robert Heinlein, and there's one of his books, Job: A Comedy of Justice, and he explores this question because the problem that the main character has is he goes to heaven because he's this saint and a really good guy, but he's in love with this woman who goes to hell. And the end conclusion is heaven is wherever she is. And so, what is heaven becomes a really good question. So, I always thought it was an interesting thought that he had in that book about would it be heaven without our loved ones there? And so, it's kind of hell kind of really dampens my expectations of what heaven would be, and so I dismiss them both. So, mm. uh, that's not what the Bible says. So, you know, Paul does this in Romans where he says, if God doesn't spare the natural branch, don't think he'll spare you if you don't repent. So, like it or not, the Bible is very fear factorish on even the people that believe. So, yeah, see, because in different viewpoints, hell is for every minor infraction. It's like everything. Another one of my favorite quotes: the fun people are in hell. The climate's really good in heaven. Yeah. Hey, Rimmer, good to see you. Oh man. Ah, of whom you will leave your lands. Okay. Yeah. Uh, yes, but see, that's the thing. I the Pentecostal movement that I came out of as a kid, and I was an early preacher of when I was a Pentecostal preacher. Um, the desire for holiness. Okay, there was a real holiness movement. The holiness movement of the 1800s had a lot of influence on the Pentecostal church when it was formed. It's why, like, the Assemblies of God is a teetotal organization because it was formed during that time where they were pushing prohibition of alcohol. Okay, and the idea was to always to be as holy as possible, to not have all that stuff, where every little thing can count one way or the other, whether you're going to go to a nicer spot in heaven or get a worse spot in hell. That it's a real weird viewpoint. Whereas, the whole idea is to keep yourself unspotted by the world. And I think from a deconversion point of view, that whole idea of being perfect as your heavenly father is perfect, of being unspotted by the world, puts a real heavy, um, unrealistic expectation upon yourself that you're always trying to keep the little stupid things. I remember a preacher talking about it where he'd say, this verse of scripture that says the little foxes spoil the vine. You can't allow even the little sins in because they lead to bigger things. So it's that kind of issue. So it does seem extraordinarily inconsequential to me now, but back then it was like you're trying to strive for this perfection like God, and it's a losing game. Okay, but you still have to, according to the Pentecostals, play it. And I think that's something that I got over lately. It's one of the things I still deal with. Like, I still have these unrealistic expectations of myself, and as somebody, my personality, call it autism, call it whatever you want. I make this long list of everything I'm trying to achieve. And then later on, like 2 days later, I'm like, damn, Ed, you can't even do half of that. And I think that's somewhat of a holdover from this creating, because when I was in church, we'd create lists of little sins that we wanted to get rid of. And it's a long list. And it's like, there's just no way. But there are these denominations and groups, it's how you dress, where you go, every little thing is documented. And that creates a very interesting, community to be a part of. So there's that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, the fear of hell can take a while. um, Gosh, the funny thing about heaven is, I think the only sermon there was a guy who, when I was a kid, did a sermon that I still remember about. He did a tour guide to heaven and hell. And some of the things that he did to kind of illustrate his points. But, the big draw of heaven is that you're going to see the people you love again, or that you're going to have your own eternal life or whatever. They never really describe it. Now, the book of Revelation describes it, the holy city and the new heavens and the new earth and all that crap. And the descriptions are pretty, pretty interesting, to say the least. Okay. And trying to, I've seen like atheist channels take those descriptions and put them into reality, and they look hilarious. Okay. So no, you're not. No, we're not going to do that. Oh man. The most shocking thing I learned about worldly pop culture after I deconverted, that a whole bunch of people that don't believe in God, that were pop stars, actually were more moral than some of the people I hung out with in the church. I think one of the brainwashing things about pop culture that happens inside the church is that it's all bad. And when you come out and you suddenly realize, some of these people are decent human beings. It's like, it's not that they're not bad, so so but mostly I kind of knew a lot of that stuff because I was always engaging. I was probably one of the unique pastors that I constantly engaged in pop culture in my sermons. Like, I would bring in stuff like movies and stuff and music and all that kind of stuff. Like, I did a sermon once called Creeping Death, where I brought in Metallica's song Creeping Death, and I was preaching on the 10th plague. So, I always had this one foot in pop culture and one foot out. So, but if I had a shocking thing that became a deconversion aspect, is how nice and friendly people that don't believe are. One of the things that really blew my mind is how good atheists are from a moral standpoint. Okay, it took me a while to, to catch on to that, even in the church. But once I got out, it was like, it's pretty interesting how we're not in prison and we're not, at least in the United States, that's true. But Captain Planet form. Okay. Well, I mean, that's the problem with heaven. It's totally speculative. And my first domino, oh shit, it's going to Bible college and realizing they didn't have all the answers. um, but the very first domino is doubt in the truth of the message of whether or not these events happen. For me, it was Jesus. It's why I do the Life of Christ series that I do, because in that series, I'm telling you all the doubts that I had. Okay. And then saying what the reality of it was. But my first domino was probably genuinely studying the Bible and going, this doesn't make sense. Okay. That's usually what it is for most of us. A lot of people think that we just, you'll hear the trope all the time. You just wanted to sin and you didn't want to acknowledge God and all that stuff. I don't find that to be real with most people that deconvert. The people that come to my channel and talk about their deconversion, it's always, it's always this. I studied the Bible, and the more I got into it, the more I realized it was BS. Okay. That's kind of where it started for me. Only because I had a real strong emotional attachment to the faith, I kept overlooking all that stuff. But the more I studied and the more I doubted, the worse it got. But the first domino is always, that doesn't sound right about something that the Bible claims. And I think that's probably 90% of people that deconvert, that's where they start. That something about their faith just doesn't make sense anymore. Yep. We're all siblings of Christ. Boy, that sounds so familiar, David. Okay, it sounds so familiar. Uh, yeah, this is an interesting question because without the book of Revelation, I don't think you have a really solid afterlife message in the New T and the NT. The New Testament, Jesus talks about hell more than he talks about heaven. If he talks about heaven at all, he talks about the kingdom of God and it coming in glory. And the thing is, when you read the Bible, it sounds more like there's not this heavenly place where everybody floats on clouds. It's more everybody comes back here. We have a new heaven and a new earth and a new order, so to speak. And in that respect, I think the JWs get it better. Okay. They actually read the scriptures on that aspect of it. So, yeah, I on my old blog, Old Things Rabyd, I did a 50-part series on marriage and the Bible and came to the painful conclusion that there's not a lot of rules when it comes to polygamy. Okay. It's just kind of accepted. So, and there is no prohibition, by the way, ladies, of women marrying multiple men either. I couldn't find that either. But when you actually study marriage in the Bible, it's actually quite poly, to be honest. So there's that. Um, you're right. It's deliberately vague and that's on purpose because think about it. If you want a religion to appeal to somebody and an afterlife message to appeal to somebody, make it so they can use their imagination to make it into something they want it to be. Okay. That's why when you talk about heaven with people who believe in it, they all have very different views that sit with their personality and what they think heaven is. Um, you know, and even when Christians get in conversations with each other, and this is what, for those of us deconverting, we talk about hell a lot, but heaven, when you really consider it, is more nonsensical because what heaven is would be very much in the eye of the beholder. For me, giving me long enough time to assess all whether things are good and hanging out with people that I actually care about and all that, and not having to go to work. That'd be good. Um, but yeah, we all create, the problem with believers, and they don't seem to realize this sometimes, and we have to deconvert out of it, is creating notions of what heavens are and what theologies are and stuff like that. It's stuff that we do. And the more nebulous a religious concept, the more it can appeal to people, because people can use their imagination and make it into anything they want. So there's that. So, yeah, I guess you can make it that way. Hey, EE. And I also have to put you up here. Thank you very much. Yeah, I will pay attention to comments that are monetized quicker than anything else. My Christian coworker says to me, if God showed himself and told you he was real and all the Bible atrocities are true, what would I fold and follow him and survive to be genuine or burnt? What do you think? First of all, that's a real nice hypothetical. Okay. And a lot of us have been asking God to show himself and stop being hide and seek champion for quite some time. It's the hiddenness of God that he's trying to address there, but he's giving you a hypothetical that actually hasn't happened. And Christians love hypotheticals. So I would love to, I would say that if he did show himself genuine and real, but the atrocities are still real, I guess I can't remember the Greek philosopher's name, or if he says, if the gods are malevolent, I don't want to serve them as a good human being. So I guess I would shake my fist from hell rather than serve a tyrant and an evil person. I have better morality than that. That'll really burn them when you say that you have better morality than the God of the Bible, then at that point. Okay. So, but yeah, they're going to, coworkers, I've never had that problem in my work, probably because my employer takes a strong stance against proselytization, and because we have so many people in it. So, um, um, I was thinking about this today, Wolf, myself. What can I say about this? Not believing that you're created in the image of God, not being chosen of God to be one of his remnant, not being any of that stuff. It takes a while, but I think, I've done videos on this of 5 things like atheism has done for me. One of them is humble me. A couple hundred years from now, nobody's going to give a damn who the rabid atheist was, if they even remember that I exist. Okay. And I think we got to remember that this idea of being chosen, all that, is an appeal to our ego. Okay. But not being special anymore has its advantages. Like, I can look at my fellow human beings and put myself now on a level playing field with them. Whereas as a Christian, I'm up here above them. I know something true and you don't. Okay. So I don't know. I think I would look at the benefits of not being that way. To me, the benefit is I can now look at my fellow human beings and say, you're just like me. Okay. And we can start off on the evens. So that was good. That's a good way to start, is looking for the benefits of not being chosen, not being special. I do this all the time with me. Okay. It's like, I'm not special anymore. I don't have the special call of God on my life. I've tried being a pastor, where you've been told all your life you have a special call of God to be a preacher, and then you have to dump that. So I feel your pain, but so there's that aspect of it. But that's one way I could see you getting over it, is doing something like that. So, and I do want to thank Triple E. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. I know that you're kind of in process, and so this stream is for you. So if you ever need any more advice or help, just ask. So it's kind of why I do what I do. Um, I mean, for me, I don't believe in a soul anymore. So, that's kind of one of the things, the immortal soul. Presbyterians don't take the Bible literally, so I was able to reconcile like evolution with religion easily. It was experiencing hypocrisy that made me drop it instantly. Okay. I had this discussion with somebody in the comments once because they're like, I don't believe in ex nihilo creation. And my point to them was at some point you have to have a God creating all the primordial stuff to be that thing, even if you don't take the Bible literally. The wonderful thing about religions that don't take the Bible literally, like Christian denominations that don't take it literally, is they're already partially deconverted. Okay. To me, that's where it starts, where you just realize that the Bible's message is complete mythology. And that's the first step in recognizing its mythology is you don't take it literally anymore. So it's kind of it's one of those things where I really learned, it's one of the things I've been thinking about is how a lot of denominations are in deconversion. They just don't realize it. They still want to hold on to these core beliefs, but they're dumping stuff already. And that's what deconversion is. You start dumping beliefs. Okay. Um, so there's that. Yeah, you're going to get that triple E. I, I posted a meme, I think a while ago on the Rabyd Atheist Facebook page of, you know, going through the logic of there's a verse in scripture where David's baby, his baby with Bathsheba who dies at 7 days, and God basically kills the kid, and literally says so. This baby's going to die. And we'd have to say God is responsible for that. Is killing babies evil? Yes. Okay, so God killed the baby, so God is evil. No, God is good, and that's the problem. Okay, because that's where you can see the indoctrination. Okay, like there are certain things, like even in this stream here, people have expressed opinions that are Christian based that they still believe about stuff, but it's like you're still assuming certain things indoctrinately, like the existence of a soul. People just like souls exist. Like, well, prove a soul exists. Oh, can't do that. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm. You're thinking about the same things I am today, Earl. I look at religion now, and it takes a massive amount of hubris sometimes, and pride and ego to believe some of the things you believe. Well, I think I don't know if it's hubris, but I think everybody can reach out in human empathy towards each other because we're all human. Um, and I think those that would probably promote natural rights would have a good discussion with you. So, yeah, Sikhs are pretty good. I've never had problems with them either. They're generally nice people for the most part. The ones I've run into, anyway. Okay, I feel special long just made it out of the gene pool. If anyone is trying to make you think you have special powers by direct out to God, they're lying. They have the same primate being. I think that's kind of the basis of equality is we all have brains and we all are trying to do our best. And the vast majority of us, that's what there's there's this aspect of realizing you're the same as everybody else that's humbling, but at the same time encouraging. Okay. It allows me to dialogue with my fellow human beings without thinking I'm above them. Okay. And I think it's a good step to being a good human being is just not thinking you're above everybody else. Um, yeah, joyful approach. Yep. I do that too. I mean, the joyful approach is kind of based on the fact that you think the worst, and then when it doesn't happen, you can take joy in the fact that the worst didn't happen. So, Yeah, which kind of proves how evil he is. Okay. You see, the problem I have is God's solution always seems to be killing people. Okay. When I do my When God's Kills series, it's absolutely infantile the reasons that God kills people. It's not just that he kills everybody, it's the reasons for which he does it. That's where the morality problem comes in. He gets pissed off, and so he just wipes out a bunch of people that he doesn't like. And that's the problem. It's the indiscriminate killing of people just because he gets pissed off that makes him morally reprehensible. If somebody breaks in my house and tries to kill me and I kill them instead, I don't consider that I would definitely want therapy after that, but I would still consider that a justified killing. But when I look at the way God kills people, it's indiscriminate. He doesn't give a shit. Okay. And so I don't have to serve him if I don't want to. So thankfully it doesn't exist. Oh, Earl, you shouldn't think that way. I like you. So there's that. And a lot of other people like you too. We're glad you're around. Started questioning this fact of entitlement and entailment, even if the church was wearing smart clothes and special groups. Yes. Um, it's the entitlement. Um, every human being likes to feel they're entitled to something, and religion definitely taps into that. And when you get out of it, I guess I'm very sensitive to when people are selling me shit anymore. Working in retail now for almost 15 years and being a preacher for 20 years, you kind of get used to the sales pitch, and how much of it is sales pitch is amazing to me. Um, we're all selling something, I guess. So there's that. Uh, uh, yeah, they do invite everybody to their services. They do. And they are very hospitable. So, and they don't really push it down your throat. At least my one experience with them was when I was in Texas. So, yeah, Earl has a great story of her birth. I read it. It's good writing. I will give you that, Earl. That was well written. Um, a kind of funny, sad story all at the same time, but it was good. It was good writing. It made me feel a lot of things. So, well, first of all, I would say quit thinking of evil as an entity, okay, because it's not. Um, I view evil and good as adjectives to describe actions. And, if an action promotes well being and reduces harm or brings about some sort of good, you can call that a good action. And then the opposite is true. But I got the biggest thing to get rid of when you're deconverting is the idea of evil and good as entities in and of themselves. They're descriptors. Okay. And once you understand that they're descriptors, um, it changes how you look at good and evil. I don't, I look at the character of my actions, not whether they're part of this entity known as evil. It's the whole getting over, God is good. So we're personifying good as God. And then the devil is evil. I have a guy that used to comment that all the time. And I'm like what the hell? But it's that personification of good and evil that you have to get over, that they're not entities that exist in and of themselves. And once you get past that, it's a lot easier to deal with good and evil. Um, it's not the absence of God. Uh, I think you can have evil actions and you can have good actions. And sometimes actions do a little bit of both. And that's when it gets really complicated. So, yep, great blog entry. Recommended read. Yes, yes, I would agree with that. Aw. Yeah. Well, you're awesome. Okay, you're awesome. You've always treated me fair, and I can. Hey, Bren, good to see you. Oh. Uh, let's see who else we got. Here we go. Oh boy, this is a deconversion issue that you will probably be dealing with the rest of your life, is other people's perception of your former life as a Christian. Um, the thing they can't get over is if you really believed, you'd never give it up. Okay, if you were a real believer, you would never give it up. I'm not. I remember one time I used like the parable of the sower, which is really more the parable of the seeds. And I pointed out to them that two of the types of seeds actually do believe, but something else pulls it away. And so they can't really say that you didn't believe. You know, they can say all kinds of things based on that parable about you, like, you know, it never got depth of soil. I don't know how they say that about me after 40 years of doing it. But other things choked it out. I suppose you could do that. Like, you know, the other things that choked out my faith: reason, logic, facts, science, you know, a long list of stuff that offers better and more predictable explanations of the life, universe, and everything. But I get what you're saying, because a lot of times I've gotten comments for the entire 5 years of this channel of, you were never really a pastor and you were never really a Christian to begin with. You were just fake. And it's like, I know what I was. It's the assumption that they know what's going on up here, or that they knew what's going up on here. And it's like, it's that aspect of life where people who believe something very strongly, and they can't fathom people leaving it. And so they get very emotionally. To me, this is kind of insulting, but at the same time, I guess I understand it. They don't want to admit that maybe they've had their doubts too. Okay. And there's a pretty good chance they've had their doubts. And so when you leave the faith and they want to kind of reassure themselves, they'll say, if you were a real Christian, you would have never left. Okay. And that's kind of the route they go on. It's funny how they'll quickly change their theology if I decide to come back. Okay, if I ever decided to come back, I wonder how many people would welcome me with open arms. You know, it's like, I don't know. So there's that aspect of it. Because they're emotionally driven. I can tell you that. Okay, when I first started, I've been preaching. I was preaching since I was 16 years old. I stopped the day I left the church. Okay, I haven't preached a sermon since. But during that entire time, I would say there was an evolution of my sermon stuff, from being more teaching what the Bible says to, I've learned that stories motivate people more, emotion motivates people more, passions, connecting with people's passions, and yes, their bigotry and their stuff from time to time. Connecting with all those emotional elements is much more effective at getting people to do what you want. Okay, it's why I would make the same observation about every politician as well. Listen to a politician's speech and ask yourself, how much time are they spending engaging rational reality, and how much time they're trying to engage your emotions and trying to get you to move it. So um, they do motivational stuff because they know it motivates people, whereas challenging sermons that kind of challenge people's morality, some people like them, but it's really weird, because the personality people that like challenging messages seem to not really think a lot of themselves in the first place, or they think they quite the opposite, one or the other. So uh, man, I watch some YouTube, but I'm usually too busy content creating to watch YouTube as much as I would like to anymore. um thinking about things, working on things. So I don't know. I guess I could see it. Trump's going to get chastised again a lot from religious people. There's religious people that think he's, the next Messiah, and then there's the opposite end that think he's the devil himself. I saw in my feed a couple days ago about how Trump was the Antichrist. We've already got that narrative going again. So, yeah, it's going to happen. Okay. We've already been through this before. I'm much more low key about Trump being president this time than last time, because it's like, I've been here, done that, survived it once. I'll probably do it again, assuming, of course, something else doesn't get me first. So, yep, it is weak sauce. It's just absolute. It's a real poor argument. Instead of trying to prop up, the truth of what they believe or providing evidence, they just say you were never a believer in the first place. Let's see. I just, yeah, it's. See, that's the thing. I was talking about with my therapist about this a couple of days ago, yesterday, about how some kids, because I have grandchildren, and I suspect that some of them are going to be non-believers by the time they get out of their family's household. And she was saying that some just don't buy the bullshit right away, and other people just buy into it. It really has a lot to do with personality and stuff like that. So, it's an interesting side note to the fact that some people aren't fooled as easily, and it seems like an all-knowing God would take that into account. Yeah. Yep. I'm not either, and I never was when I was in the church, which is kind of weird. So it is absolutely a business. It's a faith business. Religion is a business. It's interesting how that business runs as far as getting money, because some people really push the good works that they do, and so people give money because they got a soup kitchen or whatever. But when you really look at it, it's a con. Okay, I get we're in Deconversion Hangout, so I can probably say this a little bit more directly. The real problem a lot of these theists have when I comment this, when I talk about it being a con, they get all upset because they don't want to believe they've been conned, okay, into something that's basically, I had a massive problem when I realized Christianity was true, and I was still in the pulpit. It was a moment in the pulpit when I deconverted from Christianity, and suddenly realizing I made my living off of basically lying to people. I didn't really think of it as lying before that, but then after that, how do you go back? And it's all about getting money. I put it this way in my deconversion story. I was like, Ed, you're an SOB because you preach people a false problem that they have, give them a false solution, and because they're thankful for you, they put money in the basket to keep you paid. Okay. And this is the nature of this business. Okay. It's a natural con that we've been doing to ourselves since who knows how long. And once you see the con, you can't unsee it, and yeah. I do video reactions on Saturday. I'm doing another one. So, soon. So that'll be fun. I'm going to hang out with B.S. Lewis, I think this Friday. So I'll be there. But yeah, I will take a look at some, just send me video suggestions in the chat so I don't forget them. Okay. Make sure they're put in the chat. But it's like, yeah, I have no problem looking for new material. I'm starting to have fun. I had more fun reacting blind to some of this stuff than I did knowing what was going to be said, because I like to play the game. Can I predict what they're going to say next? Okay. So yeah. Yep. It's tax-free business selling an invisible product. And we have a lot of that, actually, more than just church. Okay. Every religion does that to an extent. So Yeah, this is the problem, isn't it, of religion? It is a mental virus, and it takes a long time to get over it for some of us. I was in the church so long, I'm still in therapy. So um, it it's just, man, I feel you, David. I feel you. But that virus, I still have that virus in me. I think some from time to time, and I have to push out against it. It's like being infected with a virus that never really leaves your body, but you know, it doesn't necessarily affect you after a while. So, uh, yep, yep, yep. Genuine letters of Paul. He did a lot of fundraising in those letters. It's kind of interesting. Um, yeah, there's definitely friendships in the church, but as some of us will tell you, that you can find friendships in other things besides religion. Okay, I think religion has another con. Like you're not gonna. There's a low key message in a lot of churches that you're never gonna find a real, eternal friendship like you will with their religion. Because if you're both going to heaven, you can have this friendship not just for the rest of your life, but on into eternity. It's like it's a real good sales. Religion does a lot of good things well that keeps them going, but at the end of the day, the core of it is false. And so I don't know. It very much is. They've got a market on fellowship, that's for sure. Okay, because but it's not a complete one because I there are other things you can do, other organizations you can be a part of, all of that stuff. You definitely can learn how to find friendships and fellowships outside of it. If I had ever learned these lessons, I tend to be my introverted self, and so it's that. Well, yeah, he doesn't fool a lot of Christians either. It's why the Christian world. Go look around, and you will find that the Christian world is very, very divided on Trump. Okay, the more mainline liberal denominations hate his guts, really, and the more conservative fundamentalists are going gaga over him like he's the next coming of Jesus. So some of their artwork kind of depicts that. He can get past Genesis. That's good. Yep, I would agree with that. It's one of see this is reconstruction here. When you start to realize that there's good people out there doing good things and they're worth paying attention to and they're actually affecting real life for the better. Part of the reconstruction thing I've had to do is look for good things. And it's really hard because our primate brains are triggered by stuff that's a threat to us more than stuff that's good for us. Um, and so there's that aspect of it. So and as Rimmer points out, you can find friends here too. I'm all for that. Okay. All right. All right. We'll cuddle up. All right. I like cuddling, but I think my grandkids do it better than anybody right now. So yeah, it's creating a common interest is what you're dealing with here. The one thing religion does well is it creates a common interest that a lot of people can latch into. Not everybody, but a lot of people can latch into that common interest and have nothing in common with the people in the room. I was always struck by how different people were in the church that if it wasn't for religion, they probably wouldn't hang with each other. Okay. And that's one of the advantages religion does is it can create this common interest. And when you're deconverting from that, you're like, you can actually, I think, theoretically find better friendships that's actually based on common interests rather than this made up common interest. I think that's something that we have to concede, that religion is very good at creating a made up common interest. So there's that aspect of it. Yes, this is kind of what this show is about, David. I'm with you. I have my own struggles with still having stuff floating around in my brain that I know came from my time in faith. And I have to like literally detangle that from time to time. Now, there's also the aspect of reconstruction of coming up with new attitudes about people. Like, probably the quickest thing that changed into me was my attitude towards the LGBTQ. Okay. It's like, I don't have any, if it wasn't for my religion, I wouldn't have any reason to hate these people. Okay. So I lost the hatred of them almost instantly, and that was a great emotional relief, by the way. It was an easy one to drop. You really have to gin that one up. And then other attitudes about that, of course, took a lot more time, but it's like, you still find yourself slipping into religious thinking about the way the world works. So yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I'm glad you're Alex. I hope this stream is helping you. Okay, because you need to realize that there's lots of people that have been through this. You're not alone. I do not want you to ever feel like you're alone in any of this. Okay, there's plenty of people here who have been there. So there's that. Oh. Yeah, and that's the other issue is sometimes you're good friends with people in church and then you leave. And then how do you maintain that friendship without the church? It becomes a real struggle. I hear you. I do hear you. So, see, this is where our hypersensitivity to touch differs, Earl. Yours causes you to cringe. Mine is quite the opposite. And it's caused me to get wrong impressions about people based on touch because, yeah, don't surprise touch me. I'll break your nose. Not on purpose. It's a reaction, but it's very pleasurable for people to hold and cuddle me, and it's like I get the wrong idea. Okay, so too many times I've gotten the wrong idea, particularly with the female of the species. So they'll touch me and cuddle me in certain ways, and I get the complete wrong idea. So no. Uh, yeah, I've talked about this a couple of times. Is there anything positive? Um, I've had good positive friendships that have remained. I think discarding everything in religion is not necessarily bad. Like they hook into certain things that other people, all religions have some commonality that appeal to our common humanity in a sense, but then they fuck it up by talking about how bad humans are in some way, shape, or form. Um, so yeah, there's some good positive stuff that I've kept. Like I still meditate, but my meditation is purely about calming myself down and clearing me, clearing the my brain a little bit so I can focus a little bit more. So there's that aspect of it. So uh, you only have the New York Jets in common. Well, thanks for stealing our defensive coordinator. Jeez. So, I don't know. It's the Jets. So uh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's finding commonalities with friendships. I think is probably your best idea. Sorry for the pause there, but I was thinking about this because if there is a friendship inside the church, there's probably something you have more in common than just the religion. So maybe you can hinge on that. Uh, let's see. Literally everything. Yes. Yes. Yeah, just my reaction to 404 limit. One, this is a deconversion hangout, so you're obviously a believer. So it's not that you're not welcome here. It's just, I'm not going to deal with the drive-by theists today. Uh, yeah, you can purge a lot of the superstitious parts that can't be proven, but like meditation, they've done studies on people that learn how to calm their mind and then focus, and it is very beneficial in that sense. Um, Learning the human connections, like there are certain churches, if I walk into them, I know what time it is, year it is by the incense burning, and incense smell has had a lot of study to it that can affect your mood and stuff. There's some truth to all the bullshit. There's parts of it that work, and that's what reinforces it. So, my best friend in the world went from being a pagan to being a Christian. So, me and him have known each other since we were little kids, and if he called today and needed my help, I'd be on a plane. It's that kind of friendship. So it's also the kind of friendship where he understood long before I knew I was autistic that I was autistic, because he understands that when we reconnect, it doesn't matter how long it is, we pick up right where we left off, because in my mind, the friendship is still the same, okay, without the contact. And that's kind of the weird part of being autistic. We get surprised when people say, well, you haven't called me in a month. It's like, I still like you the same. It's like, it's just one of those things. We just don't get the social construct of keeping contact. I don't send Christmas cards to people. I'll just put it that way. But yeah, I still have some that are religious. Let's see, on Facebook, I think I have 2 friends that are former pastors still, and we talk every once in a while. But they're more liberal. I'll put it that way. They're much more laid back about their beliefs. So I think I could have friends with I just can't. Fundies would just turn me off anymore. The fundamentalist Pentecostal religion, I just can't do anymore. But yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Earl, for stating in very plain terms why some people are going to get banned out. Yes, leave your attitude behind. Thank you. I think there have been some studies on that. I remember reading a scientific study about the effect that smells have. It would stand to reason from an evolutionary standpoint, though. Like if you're out, we got to remember that we're not too far removed from our hunter gatherer, ancestors. Civilization is a rather new thing on the historical timeline, and so yeah, I imagine as hunter gatherers smell, if you smell the fresh berries growing on the bush, you're going to salivate, and that has a positive impact on your brain. If you get back to our primal need for smell, I think some of that. I mean, I know, aren't you the one that can't smell, and that's one of your problems? I think, as I recall. But yeah, it can have an effect on mood. Yes, we have boundaries here. We have boundaries. I have boundaries too. So there's that. Yeah, it's not, meditation really isn't theistic, although they do kind of bother it. In humans. Hey, thanks Triple E for coming. I appreciate you, man. I know you're going through this process right now and coming out of it. So this stream is for you. So stop by, watch later. If anything that helps you, more power to you. Okay. Yeah, this is the one that I have a lot of fights with Christians today, because I will recognize the 7 authentic letters of Paul, and I will also recognize that Jesus is possibly one of the early apocalyptic preachers. But Jesus's prophecy did not come to pass, and I think the shift in the tone of Paul's writings, so to speak, from his 7 authentic ones to his 6 that are not as authentic, and where they start to institutionalize the church and create leadership and look more long term, is a direct result of that failed prophecy. Okay, and now we have to be apologists, and we have to rethink it. Okay. And that's when you look at the Bible, you start to look at it differently. Um, we've had this discussion, I think, people have mentioned, being a secular theologian. I guess I can do that, but I understand yeah. Yeah. The advantage would be you don't get manipulated by smell, unless it's subtle. Yeah. See, yeah, I thought that was you, Brendan. You can't smell at all. And that means that smells are not going to manipulate your mood. But for those of us that can, yeah, I think, our primal days would have, this is a nasty smell because it's bad for me. So I stay away from it, and it's going to trigger all the negative things in the brain. And then other things are more positive, and that's a good thing. So um, that's that. Yes. Yes. I can't imagine that. So, but yeah, I, I did remember that. See, I'm getting better. Um, yeah, eating would be interesting, Earl. I can't fathom it either. So, yeah, this has kind of been the first challenge to the old Deconverters Hangout, where we've had a theist break in, and I want to address that. I am not going to allow that kind of talk at all in this stream. So if you're here for the deconversion talk and you're worried that that's what's going to happen, I am instructing my mods at this point that are here and in the future during the deconverters, hangout. Theists are not allowed to preach. Period. Full stop. Time them out for 30 minutes and just immediately don't tolerate. Don't talk with them. Just time them out. I'm here to talk deconversion. It's not about necessarily creating an echo chamber, as somebody mentioned earlier, but it's absolutely about, letting us talk without interference by theists. Okay, it's a theist-free zone. Okay, if you are a theist here, that's fine, and you want to talk respectively about what we're going through as people leaving the faith, I have no problem with that at all. Okay, but if you're just going to come in here and start with that presuppositional bullcrap. Think of something that doesn't have a creator, a whole bunch of shit. Okay, I can look at a tree growing in the yard, and I don't see somebody coming out there and adding little bits and pieces to it every day. Kind of seems to be doing that by itself. so, uh, as I understand it, in the Satanic Temple, an atheist organization anyway, don't they blatantly say that they don't believe in God? Okay. They don't really believe in Satan either, as I thought. You're telling Jesus? Aw. I knew a lot of Jesuses down when I was in Texas. Which one are you telling? So I can make a joke about that too. Yeah, smells can trigger memory. I get that a lot. It's why I do modding overnight. Like I change the shelves and stuff. That's my job at my work, is to change shelves, stuff like that. And every time we do the incense part, I have a hard time because I have all these memories of church. Okay, because it seems like there's like a smell for every time of year in the church. Like every month seems to have its own smell, and I just get triggered by that. So there's that aspect of it. So I mean, there's a lot of that. Um, redacted it. Oh, yeah. I guess I can feel for you, Bren. A lot of the greats. Yeah, it's it. I mean, I remember reading it. I'm like, you guys don't even believe in God, let alone Satan. I think it's like a parody. It's a constant, continual parody of religion, and I love it. I do love it. Bad farts can erase men. Funny farts. Oh, um, I got to tell you this about that. Okay, that's a good question because a lot of you folks take a dim view of ministers. You need to realize something. There's probably a hell of a lot of them like me, okay, that are really struggling with their faith too, but it's their job. And one of the things, because I was a small church pastor, I did a lot of the manual labor, like cleaning and stuff like that. Like I had no knowledge of fixing shit, but and I'd leave that to other people that did. And in my last church, I was kind of blessed because I had like a contractor and a couple other people that did handyman work in the church, and they were always keeping that up for me. So I never had to do it. And there was a whole bunch of people that wanted to clean, volunteer to clean. So I never really had that problem. But in other churches, yeah, I had to do a lot of it. It really depends on the size of your church and how dedicated people are. Uh, but I never felt I was above that, and I told people so. Um, if you need me to clean the bathroom, I'll do that. But it was never. I'm one of those people that just I don't consider myself above any task. It's just some of them are better than others. Yeah, see, Brent, I think that would be the thing about not smelling and tasting is you have to eat to survive, but there's no real joy motivation for doing so. See, because I eat because I like the taste and smell of stuff. So I guess I get. Yeah, I mean, some pastors can do that. Like they put themselves in the pulpit and say, "I'm better than you," so everybody else needs to do the manual labor, and I'll concentrate on the spiritual things. Comes right from Acts chapter 6, where they have the deacons are let them put them over this task kind of thing, and we'll give ourselves to ministering the word in prayer. Okay, that's part of the con, by the way. Okay, I really feel that's part of the con. It's really it's that Tom Sawyer moment with the fence. Here you're going to get this gratification, from painting the fence. Here, I'll let you do it. Okay. Uh, it's and that's kind of the way it is. With some preachers, they're like, "Oh, I wouldn't want to rob you of the joy of serving the Lord by cleaning the toilets." It's that kind of thing. So. It's that aspect of it. But yeah, I feel you. I feel you. I knew a lot of pastors that were that way. They're just like, I'm not going to do manual labor. So yeah, I think so too. They use the parody as a kind of thing to do an activist church state separation stuff, and I'm very thankful for them. Okay, I really am. So, they're a lot of fun, but it's like, the funny thing about them is I don't believe in God or Satan really. So I don't have a clue. I have to constantly change it. So, oh, yep. Yeah, that happens more than often. If they ever do the true stories of sex in the church, it would be a hell of a long book. Um, the stuff that happens behind closed doors is legion. So, yeah, it could be. Yeah, that could be a serious problem if you have food allergies. And so, yeah, Bren points out that he doesn't have that. See, we talk about normal things in this chat too. Yeah, it's that chapter. I think I already went over that one, but it's like, it's putting the clergy into a position where they basically can do nothing and still get paid. And I, having been the child of a deacon's kid that did all the work, I just didn't have that attitude. It's one thing I'd never developed was this idea of I'm better than everybody else because I'm a preacher. I always fought against that inside. Most of the time, it made me feel very uncomfortable. So, yeah, it's a guilt trip. It's a guilt trip. Get over it, Alex. Don't fall for it. Once you start looking at this stuff as business and salesmanship and manipulation, it makes it easier to deconvert real quick because then you just realize, hey, I'm getting out of something that's kind of awful. So, uh, that's a funny story when you really think about it, David. So, Chair stacking ministry. Yes, I did chair stacking ministry many, many times. Holy crap. From the time I was a kid on, you can really serve the Lord by moving the chairs around. Yeah, accidental food poisoning, I think, would be an issue. You're going to have to like eat fresh stuff all the time, aren't you, Bren? You know, I have a ton of pastor stories like that. Like I had several. Like we had people that were in high positions in the denomination, like in the Michigan district, that got caught banging their secretary or looking at porn or whatever. It's I mean, I have a million of them too. There's a lot of parallels. Trust me, this happens everywhere, everywhere. Um, because sex is a repressed topic in a lot of fundy churches, it tends to be behind closed doors more often. I mean, my story that I tell that the denomination of the Michigan district sent out a letter after we had a conference and expressed their alarm that porn use during the conference tripled more than normal. So I thought that was rather interesting. And I lost track of the number of ministers that got nailed for sexual infidelity. So maybe, maybe worse. Uh, uh, yeah, that was the problem. They moved away from that. Thank you, St. Augustine. So there's that aspect of it. Yep. Stare check. You know, the free labor that these people get out for guilt is amazing to me. Yeah. See, people ask me to become part of these organizations and I decline, and it's a deconversion issue. Um, I have an aversion to anything with the word church, temple, credentials. People want me to do secular marriages, and I'm like, nope, not doing it. And it's all because of my aversion to anything religious at this point. I have to deal with it with my family, and that's probably the only place I want to deal with it. I don't want to volunteer for that stuff. I know that these are great organizations; you can have a lot of fun with them, and I don't decry them for it. But personally, I have a deconversion issue with this one. It's just I don't want to have anything remotely resembling that close my old life. So, oh yes, absolutely. The Christian education director of the denomination for Michigan got canned for porn. Um, you know, uh, I knew at least 3 pastors that got nailed for watching porn, and they ended up. There's like a 2-year rehab in the Assemblies of God for watching porn. Now, if you actually have sex with somebody, that's a different story. That can get your credentials pulled almost immediately. So, yes, it is. And I'll tell you why, Alex, because it's a position that's unelected. You have an expectation, but you also get a lot of privileges. Like Christian pastors' wives get a lot of privileges that other people in the church don't. You know, you can say things and push things a little bit more as a pastor's wife than you can. I think when I left the ministry, it really hurt my ex-wife's identity a little bit because it was a large part of her identity. She absolutely loved being a pastor's wife and being in that position where she could have influence on things without necessarily having to be elected at anything. Okay, and that's the big thing. Um, yeah, well, yeah, to you it's all a joke, and I understand that. But to me, to those of us deconverting, and I think that's why you're here is trying to understand us. The religious aspect of stuff can trigger us. I wish there was such an organization that did all those things that didn't have the word church or temple or stuff like that or credentials or anything associated like that. I'm sure there's such an organization that exists, but FFRF comes close, but every once in a while they become controversial because they don't know when to keep their mouth shut on certain issues. But So there's that. Yeah, nailed. Uh, yeah, I mean, it kind of forces you to be communal, doesn't it? You like have to have people around. Oh man, I feel for you because I there are times I don't want people around. So I don't know what is canned porn. It's kind of like canned corn, only much more interesting, I guess. So, but yeah, I just it they people just I lost track of how many ministers when I was in the Assembly of God had sexual issues listed as the reasons they were no longer preachers. Um, I think probably the two more tragic ones were, oh gosh, when I was in Bible college, there was a story that one of the professors who had gone to that Bible college earlier told about a lesbian couple, but the one was really into it and the other one wasn't. And they basically suspended both of them, and both of them became ostracized and all that stuff. So it was like it was one of those things that was really bad for both the people involved. And then later on, when I was in the ministry, there we had one of our ministers, I think, was had his credentials removed because he was in a gay relationship. So, um, but yeah, it happens all the time. It absolutely happens all the time, and it's far more common. It isn't it interesting that nobody talks about a church sex scandal anymore because they're so common. Uh, it it's it depends on how you look at it from the female point of specifically. Yeah, it could be involving corn. We'll leave it there. Uh, yeah, I'm not militant. I'm a compassionate anti-theist because I think it wastes time. But I understand the feeling. If you grew up with atheists and anti-theists that were absolute and everybody's grill about it, yeah, I can see it. I mean, I'm not doing that. You won't see Ed, the rabid atheist, in anybody's theist chat trolling. I just don't do that. Okay, because I absolutely understand that. Now, I will react to their videos. Um, I, I'm happy to have people there here as long as they respect it. When people reconvert, like I hear people they talk about they're deconstructing their faith and they reconstruct it and they end up still being believers. That's one aspect of it. That's why William Lane Craig's recent message about deconstruction really bothered me because he didn't seem to be aware that some people deconstruct their faith and then when they reconstruct it, they still believe. Okay. Um, you can, I suppose, reconvert into another religion that doesn't have Jesus in it. Okay. But so it's that aspect of it. It's when people are questioning their faith, um, they will tear it apart and try to put it back together. And sometimes they can't put it back together because they, like myself, realize that it's built on a lot of false premises. And then there's others that do reconstruct their faith and have a completely different faith. Like I know of one. There's several people that are Christians that I know of that stopped being one part of Christianity and moved to another. Okay, that was their reconstruction experience. So they still allow you to go to church. Okay, you just can't talk. Okay, you can't speak. You're just there to sing and do whatever. The discipline process in the Assemblies of God, at least it was that way. They wanted you to go to church, but you had to leave the church you were a pastor of and go somewhere else. And you just had to be quiet. You couldn't do anything. Okay, you couldn't minister, you couldn't preach. For a whole year, you're just in like a rehab situation, like the bad kind of rehab, praying the gay away, but we're going to pray your porn addiction away. That kind of thing. I wouldn't doubt that. It's, gosh, David, what do I say? It's, it's interesting how many cops I had as congregants over the years, and how many of them were kind of controlish, okay, and perverted as well, okay. Like that aspect of it was always there. Both being controlling and perverted were kind of hand in hand. And but yeah, definitely some cops would be that way. I'll make that of what I will. Well, folks, I hit my hour and a half limit, and I didn't even notice my social anxiety at all. So maybe I'm good today, but I do have to kind of run. um, and go and get ready for work. I appreciate everybody coming out. This has been a great discussion. I'm going to try to find a way maybe to let this, I do want some of you, maybe if you're willing to get in here and talk with me more directly, but I want to experience how I could do that without too many technical issues. But I do thank everybody for stopping by, but I do have to run because I do have to get ready for work. And tonight's my Friday. So, I think me and BS are getting together. Lewis are getting together tomorrow for a live stream, or maybe the next week. But stay tuned for that. And as always, do all the things, like, share the video, appreciate super chat. I don't monetize this one with ads, but I do appreciate the super chat. Thank you very much to Triple E earlier. Thank you very much for that. And as always, you guys do all the things, like the video. I appreciate that. Tap the buttons. I appreciate it. Hit them. Or as Earl says, or else allegedly. So thank you very much for all that. I appreciate all you guys. Hopefully we can hang out next week, much similar fashion. If you have more questions, you're always welcome to ask. Thank you very much. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So you want to take all your time, money, and opportunities and give them to yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And as always, thanks for stopping by, guys. And I will catch you next time.